This is a yelling podcast.
From poking at you to plans and everything in between, this is Magnified Pod, the only podcast that discusses culture, religion, politics, and the entire discography of everyone's favorite left coast punks, MxPx. And we're back. Yeah. John, this is episode number, what is this, 8?
9?
9?
We did a special one in there.
Yeah, I think this is 9.
Yeah.
This is the 8th.
Proper.
7th? 8th? I don't even know.
We've done a few.
We've done a few, but we got a bunch under our belt, feeling pretty good. I'm actually excited about this album because Panic is, I'm not going to say which, but it's one of my favorite MxPx albums.
It's up there.
The tone on this album, strikingly different than just about any other MxPx album that has come before it or will come after it.
Yep.
Cynical, dark, a little negative. And John, speaking of
those things.
Speaking of dark, cynical, and negative, we have had a couple detractors in the social media sphere as of late.
It's weird. Normally social is such a healthy place.
Yeah, if there's anything that social media is known for, it's it's encouraging positivity, love, support.
I will say with this show and with this community, we've been really lucky that it's like almost entirely incredibly positive and people sharing their stories, and that's been really cool. So maybe I should stop shitting on it.
You know, I think you're absolutely right that we're not getting an avalanche of negativity, but I'll be honest, I was a little taken aback when we got a couple a not so positive review, and I'm thinking, okay, well, I wanted to give the person the benefit of the doubt. Maybe they haven't been hanging in from episode 1.
Right.
You know, we put out this First Impressions album, or episode rather, for the new MxPx album, which if you haven't listened to, purchased, downloaded from iTunes, wherever, from the MxPx website, you should do that.
Do it.
But it was a short ep, just our first impressions, talking about the new album. And something that we talked about on it was, well, I personally was saying I was kind of wishing that there was some song kind of addressing the gap in Mike writing about things related to his faith, and then now very much not talking about that. And I think for a first-time listener, that might come off as, why do you care?
Right.
Why does it matter? What's the difference? It's his personal belief. Why should that relate to the music? I mean, because historically and throughout the band's history, I mean, that has always been a part of the band.
Yeah.
And so giving them the benefit of the doubt that they don't understand kind of what our concept for this pod is.
Our brand.
And it is talking about culture, religion, politics, as our intro states in every episode. And that includes how those things relate to MxPx. And that will include the beliefs that have been espoused by the members.
Right.
So I think it's up for grabs for any and all discussion related to that. So if you're a first-time listener for this episode, we do talk about our own experiences growing up in the evangelical world, growing up Christian. I no longer identify as a Christian. I won't speak for John how you choose to label your
Sure.
religious identity, but this is going to come up, and I know that one of the critiques, John, maybe you want to take this since I appear to be monologuing as I do. This idea of a tweet that we received that we are looking down our noses at people of faith.
Mm-hmm.
So, do you have want to take that?
Yeah, I mean, again, I'll say like overwhelmingly what we've heard from people has been really positive, and that's been really cool. And I think we've heard from a lot of people who feel similar to us, regardless of where you are with faith and your outlook on the world and stuff right now. I think a lot of us come from a specific universe. If you're a big MxPx fan and a big fan of, alternative music in the Christian scene in the 90s, that's like a specific context. So I think a lot of us feel a camaraderie in that kind of regardless of where they're at now. But yeah, I think like you said, the new record coming out has brought some new folks to the pod, which is great, but it's also, I think, maybe made clear that if you haven't been hanging with us from the beginning, it's a little bit like, as Mike himself told us, why is the first, third of the pod or so usually devoted to kind of issues besides MxPx? And I think from the beginning we wanted to talk about MxPx as a jumping off point for kind of like broader discussion about culture and faith and a bunch of things. We thought that, we love the band, and we also thought that that would be a good place from which to address a bunch of stuff that we care about. So yeah, one thing that we heard from somebody was that like they felt like we were being dismissive of the church, of Christianity, and yeah, back to what you'd said before, like I still identify as a Christian. I said, I think on the first step that like I never felt on fire for the Lord as others had said. But I've kind of had this like slow and steady faith forever, and it's still very much a part of my life, but it does not connect to the often conservative leanings of that world that we've addressed, the Christian bookstore alternate universe, and then what a lot of people think of as sort of like evangelical today. Like I feel very different from that kind of Christianity. So if that's where you're coming from, you're naturally probably going to find some of the things that we care about and address to be a little off from where they're at. So yeah, I just kind of wanted to say it's definitely not our intention to look down our nose at what anybody thinks, but we're also not going to back down from our thoughts, our theology on things. And, like I said, I grew up in the mainline Protestant world. I was always on the periphery of the evangelical world. I still feel like that to some extent. So I've walked that line a lot, and I can sympathize with folks on a lot of sides within the spectrum there, but I tend to come down on the more mainline progressive side, and yeah, that'll be something we continue to address. I don't know.
Very, very well said. And I do want to say, I feel like we need to address this idea of respecting difference.
Yeah.
Because there's this notion, especially right now in the state of politics, that we need to we want to elevate the conversation, and we don't want to like be attacking or being we don't want to be going up to somebody in public and saying like we don't like your policies, or you suck Sarah Huckabee Sanders, or you're the worst Paul Ryan, or whatever.
For example.
And we need to just play nice, because that's the respectful thing to do.
Right.
So let me
Civility.
Yes, that's the word, civility. And so this is a very layered issue. So if somebody comes up to me and they're conservative, have a conservative leaning, and they disagree with our position on LGBTQI I plus issues. And they say, you need to respect, you can have your opinion. You need to respect mine.
Right. So much for the tolerant left.
Yes.
Et cetera.
Et cetera. The intolerant tolerance or whatever they the conservatives like to say. So, John and I, we talked about this after we received this comment, and I will happily say, oh, you have this sort of opinion about this theological, you think this about the resurrection, or this is this particular atonement theory, or this is how you think about these different contextual things. Sure, in theory, I'll disagree with your theological or philosophical concepts of the Bible. When it comes down to an actual person, if you're going to say this person is less than because they're gay or they're trans, I'm just not going to respect that. I'm just not.
Yeah.
So if it's degrading someone's humanity, no, I'm not going to respect that.
Right.
And this is one of those issues that no, we're not going to back down. And I'm not sorry that if you think I'm being intolerant, because I'm not going to allow somebody's entire humanity to be brought down because you think the Bible says that they are immoral or less than human.
Right.
Because I think that is the immoral takeaway from the text.
Yeah, I think it kind of gets back to something we were talking about on an episode a while ago, which is like reducing people, whether it's LGBTQ people, like you were saying, or when it comes to race and gender, like reducing a person to an issue becomes a point at which we it's not clear cut. And when, like you said, I think this is in the first episode, like once you started becoming friends with folks in college who came from a different background from you, that was kind of like one of the things that shifted your theology on some of that stuff a little bit, is like once you actually meet people and see, once you study humans and you see that they
with my eye,
and Bry, like that they're actual people, and are motivated by the same things that you are and can't be so easily put into an issue or a box, then it becomes a lot more difficult to hang your hermeneutic on that. So
and at the end of the day, those things that we're all trying to find, love, acceptance, community, a sense of self and identity, and just general happiness. People just want to live. We were thrust into this life, into this world, into being, not by choice, and we all have the same way out. And my feeling is that we need to find more ways to have love in this world. And for some people, if that's, a man who's like, I found this love with another man, that is great. That is amazing, because that means there's more love taking place. And there's less sadness, there's less hatred. And and it took me a long time to get to that point and to realize that myself. And I just hope that more people come to that consensus, and to embrace more of that positivity. And it's actually one of the things I really like about the new MxPx album. Is that
good segue?
that there is so much positivity and gratitude. And I think a lot of people, for them to maybe hear our podcast and for the takeaway to be something negative, when this whole idea of this podcast is a labor of love to talk about something that's been a big part of our lives for so long, a band that we love, and to try and spread some joy about MxPx. And it's kind of bums me out that was kind of but I don't know, I guess I can maybe understand that they're like maybe felt attacked because we're against family values as they perceive.
Right. The Trump family values. I think I can sympathize more with the person who might be tuning in to hear a deep dive on Panic and then being like, what are these dudes talking about? Like if you're Mike Herrera, for example.
Sorry, Mike.
But yeah, like I said, I think, we're interested in the stuff that surrounds the culture, surrounds the band as much as we are getting into the deep dives of the band and their discography. So we are up for discussion and debate. Like, I don't want to close it off. Folks can send in their thoughts if you disagree, if you think we should approach things in a different way. It's a pretty open format here for us, but
no, for sure. And this is by no means a shutting down of dissent. If someone wants to push back, go for it.
Yeah.
But just know that we're going to push back too.
Yeah.
So we're not going to just be like, okay, agree to disagree. Mm-hmm. So we're not going to be assholes about it, but this idea of civility in a time of
Nazis,
in the time of Nazis,
children in cages,
printing
printing guns.
Sorry.
I'm gonna stop naming things.
No,
everything's awful.
The thing is, like, there's no end.
Yeah.
There is no end. So I'm not going to be like, oh, you want to put a baby in a cage and print a gun at home?
Agree to disagree.
No, that is not the way this is going to go down.
Yeah.
Sorry, not sorry. So feel free to send us an email, magnifiedpod@gmail.com, magnifiedpod on Twitter or Instagram. Hit us up. Mm-hmm. I'm just a dude on Twitter for me.
On Tape with John.
So hit us up. We're not going to pretend like you're not tweeting us, but we will push back if necessary. That might be a segue into kind of talking about what the church is even for, what role the church plays right now in this time of 3D printing guns, children in cages, Nazis running for political party. What role does the church play in all this? John, you're working on behalf of the ELCA.
Opinion's my own, for legal reasons.
Yes.
But yeah.
Sorry, disclaimer, John does not speak on behalf of...
No.
So, I'm sorry, I don't mean to name drop your denomination or anything, but... so you're of the two of us, you're the one most directly involved with a church body. Mm-hmm. What do you see as the role of the church right now? Because we're seeing a decline in church attendance, especially people in our generation, our age. What is there a role that the church should play going forward now, or as the church declines in attendance, how do they mobilize to address some of these issues? And I want you to solve this issue right now.
I will do it in a soundbite and in rhyme.
Want me to drop a beat?
Yes, please. I'm just more comfortable that way. Okay. Never mind.
Freestyle. John has hot bars.
Yo, that's the end of that. So I think, I hear a lot of people, I think regardless of whatever church or denomination or whatever you're a part of, faith tradition, I think it's probably not unusual to hear some pushback like, don't make things political. Don't step into the political realm. We want to stick to whatever the scripture, or church shouldn't be a place for that. But I hear just as many people saying this is a time more than ever when the message of the gospel is needed, when living out peace and faith and love and action is needed more than ever. So, yeah, I mean, that's always been a part of a lot of faith traditions, is living out what does it look like to engage in your community, engage in the world. For a lot of people, a background in a faith tradition has always been a part of that. I think part of the question is like, what does, and we talked about this a little bit, I think in the first episode, like where we referenced the piece about congratulations, church, you're dying, right?
Right.
Yeah, so it's kind of like,
shout out to John Pavlovitz.
Johnny Pavs. Is this a time to be fearful about what's happening for people for whom, going to a place to worship is important, when a lot of those places are shrinking or leveling off? Is this a time to be afraid, or is it an opportunity to look at what does it look like to be the church in this century or for coming generations? Is it a building? Is it podcasts and online communities? Is it more house group based? I think that's a big question regardless of kind of your faith tradition. And I think more and more millennials especially are kind of saying, why should I gather at a particular building at a particular location every week, especially as you're saying, when living out your faith, responding to the world seems more pressing. So, yeah, I don't have any easy answers to this. I just think it's an interesting question. I think regardless of kind of where you fall along, denominational or faith tradition lines, like what it looks like to gather and worship and respond could be really interesting in these next years. I don't know. Something I think about a lot.
Yeah, and I think there's something just innately human about wanting to be in community of like-minded people. Mm-hmm. And I think the most easy go-to for that is church. Mm-hmm. There's not a lot of places where people consistently gather to acknowledge that they believe the same thing.
Right.
And I mean, even as an atheist, I gotta admit that that is an attractive part
Sure.
of the church, to go, and it's like going to any group event. You go to see an MxPx show. You're all there for the same purpose, to have this experience together. You go see a stand-up. You laugh as a group. It immediately bonds you as an audience. And so I understand the draw. I mean, there's even this part of me still that has this desire to participate in some way, even without having that belief system. And but that's not to say that any church would do. And there when I was in seminary, I started doing this thing where I was trying to visit as many churches in my hometown as I could.
Interesting.
Just to say, like, hey, I am a person of a different belief than you, or non-belief, however you want to phrase it. And I live in this community, and I want to just make myself known, and I want to engage and interact with people, and just say, hey, I'm not somebody who doesn't want to talk to you or engage with you because we believe different things. On the contrary, I want to talk to you and engage with you, and because I feel like that's an important thing to do, to find out the ways that we are similar and the ways that we can connect despite this this difference, because John, I think you and I probably have, as in with most people, I think we have more in common than we do not in common. It's like if we want to talk theology, we might disagree about this one particular element of theology. But if we were to go through different texts and say, like, what do you understand from this text, I'm sure we would agree and like understand a lot of those things in a similar way. But so all that to say that there's an Episcopal church in where I live that I visited a couple years ago, just to be like, hey, I'm visiting, I'm in seminary for interfaith dialogue, and I'm an atheist. I just kind of want to just get an understanding of your community and of your church. And help me out here. Do you remember what's it's not a pastor. What's at an Episcopal church?
A priest, an Episcopal church.
I guess,
Rector,
okay.
I don't know.
Rector, maybe. Yeah, so she was saying, she's like, oh yeah, welcome. And we actually have a member here who is an atheist.
Interesting.
And he was one of the people that, like, when I don't know much about the Episcopal Church, but they like bring in some of the elements and stuff, like maybe like a cross or something, and he was participating in the service, and that was very striking for me. And I have this every once in a while, I think. I mean, there's something still. And again, I think I've said this in past episodes and I can hear Ray Comfort and all these, and all these right-wing people out there who have made these arguments that atheists secretly still believe in God. And, my attraction or draw to be a part of a community says nothing about my interest, or not my interest, but my level of belief in God's. I just think it's about the people, it's about the community. And I texted this or tweeted this at you the other day that in relation to our former denomination, this Bonhoeffer quote, the church is the church only when it exists for others. And I think when it's done right, that is probably the most attractive and useful version of the church, when it's not about indoctrinating or espousing, from on high that these are the beliefs everybody in the denomination or in the congregation needs to believe, but saying, how can we serve the greater community, church body, the world, etc.? How can we help?
Yeah.
Versus hurt.
Yeah, it's. I was just gonna say, it's like that quote that's usually attributed to Saint Francis. That's like, preach the gospel at all times, when necessary, use words. Like, the idea is you should be living your faith. It shouldn't be a, talking the talk only, but nothing to back it up, or coming from a place of judgment, like the lyrics on early MxPx albums, but living out that faith and modeling it for people and having that be something that people would want to be a part of and join. So, in conclusion, I think it's in God's book, but you just don't want to look. But we'll agree to disagree on that one. No, I mean, yeah, this is stuff that we're super interested in. I don't know, listeners' mileage may vary on how interested they are, but if if this resonates with folks out there, or if you have thoughts about kind of this question of what should the church look like today, what will it look like, definitely let us know what you're thinking.
And I should have mentioned this earlier when we were talking about some of the feedback we were getting, but we have received numerous messages through Instagram, through email, from people who said they grew up in a similar way to us, but have since moved away from religion. And that also interests me because that is my experience. And, this is something that when we say, reach out to us with your stories, please do. It very much is a part of the building blocks of what this show is about. So, and as the show continues to grow, we want to try and incorporate more conversations
For sure.
with listeners. And so if you have a story that you want to share, please reach out to us and talk to us about it. This is a conversation. This is a community of people. This is about you and us and MxPx and this whole community of people that we're all a part of. So get involved.
Yeah,
Hit us up.
for sure. Heady stuff on this pod.
Yeah, we jumped right into it.
But we have an important album to discuss.
Yes, we do.
So perhaps we collect ourselves and
Yes.
return in a few minutes.
Yes, that sounds like a good idea. I don't know. This might be one of the shorter eps.
We'll see what happens.
We'll see.
There's a lot to talk about.
There's a lot to talk about. We don't want to rush it. So we're going to take a quick break, and then when we come back, we will be discussing track by track of the 2005 release, Panic.
Yeah.
All right, we're back, and we are going to be talking Panic in this segment. But before we do that, I, Andrew Phelan, one of your hosts, and sitting here next to the one and only
John Potter.
John Potter.
JPZ. for Sheezy.
JPZ from St. Paul, Minnesota.
That's right. That's what I always say.
That's why I said it, because
Right, yeah.
everybody
Obvi.
always says maybe Minnesleazy.
I feel like maybe I've heard that at some point.
Really?
Yeah. If not, we should say it all the time now.
Yep, that's our new catchphrase. JPZ from Minnesleazy.
Love it.
Okay, so we're talking 2005 because that is when Panic dropped, and I picked this album up in 2005 when it came out. John, you've stated previously that I think after before everything and after you'd kind of fallen off, so you didn't get this album when it came out.
No.
So what was going on with John Potter in 2005, keeping him
From the goodness.
from the
Panic.
sweet punk rock jams?
I mean, this came out, I think, right after I graduated college.
Okay.
And so my mind was definitely elsewhere. I was not a Minnesleazy, but moving from Shy City to Washington, D.C. and
We gotta just keep that going.
I'm gonna drop it now. I was about to. My wife and I, girlfriend at the time, just moved out to D.C. Right after graduation. I did a program with Sojourners magazine there, and lived and worked there for a while, and so that's what brought us out there. And I don't know, I have this memory of having the MP3s of Panic on my computer somehow, and like listening through, and just not really being in a place to absorb them. So I think I sort of forgot about it. But yeah, I was in a different mental headspace in terms of like what was going on in life and what I was paying attention to. I don't even really remember a lot of other records that year that were meaningful, although maybe if I looked at a list I'd see. But like, I just remember thinking about, okay, this is the next chapter. And
Right.
yeah, I didn't. I even like looked back recently at the tour they did that year because they played in DC at the 930 Club, which is
Okay.
like famous.
Right.
A lot of punk bands in DC had shows there, and it wasn't far from where I lived, and they played there. But I completely missed that, which is weird looking back. But I think I was just kind of mentally checked out at that point.
Yeah. So I'm taking a look at kind of what came out. Kanye's late registration.
Right. That, I
dropped
do
in
remember that
2005.
being like a big one that year.
Sufjan's Illinois.
Yeah, for sure.
That was, I don't know, maybe I think in indie circles,
Sure.
Illinois was a
Huge for me, for sure.
great. Demon Days by Gorillaz was pretty huge. I'm Wide Awake. It's Morning by Bright Eyes. In Your Honor by Foo Fighters.
Yeah.
Those were albums that I
MIA, I think,
copped.
first record that year, big for me.
Yeah. So seems like then you were probably moving away from maybe punk
Yeah.
in general.
I think so. I don't think I was aware too much of what was going on in the punk world around that time, except for the fact that I was definitely aware moving to DC of like the DC punk history and roots there, and that was like I was still into all that stuff, like
Yeah.
the Discord stuff and Minor Threat and Bad Brains and all that, but that was obviously stuff that had existed a long time before I moved there. So yeah, I was kind of not up to date on the scene at that point.
Yeah, I can understand that, but on the other hand, when I think about this particular album, it sort of having the more of a return to form for MxPx. I would have thought after the last 3 albums that they had put out that you might be like, oh,
Yeah.
this is more getting back into less pop, more aggressive, maybe having some more darker tones to the songwriting.
Yeah, I remember even hearing that, I think, at the time, or maybe it was a little later, that like people were saying it was a return to form, and I think I listened and was just like, I don't know that I was in a place then to really like observe that
Or appreciate.
Yeah, but it's funny because I want to hear about where you were at in 2005.
Sure.
But I am.
Were you and Jenny engaged at that point, or when did you?
No, that was '08 that we got
Okay.
engaged. But yeah, I'm grateful to this pod for bringing panic into my life because now I'm at a place where I am ready to receive it. And yeah, I mean, we'll get into it later, but I really love this record now, and I definitely think it's a return to form. I definitely think they're hitting on politics and justice stuff in a way that they hadn't for a long time, which we obviously both resonate with. So
Right. And I liked this album when it came out, but I didn't feel as strongly about it then as I do now. I think it over the years it has significantly grown on me, and it is, when we look at, I don't know, maybe we can talk about what other people think about the album a little bit later, but it seems like a lot of people kind of put this in the either like in the middle or like somewhere in their top 5. So I think that says something about the album if MxPx fans are putting it with the likes of Life in General or Slowly Going the Way of the Buffalo, that they also feel just as strongly about it.
Yeah, I mean, there are no songs that I dislike on this record, which is something I have not said since Life in General on the pod. So I feel like the highs of Slowly Going the Way of the Buffalo are higher for me, but this might be a more consistent record overall.
That's what I don't understand, because one of the criticisms I have, or no, not that I have, that I have heard, about this album is that it's not as cohesive as,
interesting.
let's say, Before Everything and After. That people say that feels like
Sure.
a cohesive sort of sound and tone, and it's like, okay, yeah, but in terms of consistency of songwriting and quality,
Yeah.
the styles of the songs on Panic vary, but I like that. That
Yeah.
is something I really, really appreciate about the album.
It almost feels like a concept album in a way for them, which is like different territory, but it feels very of the moment. And, you know, we were talking about '05, and they definitely, I think it's clear that the record is influenced by the war in Iraq and terrorism and the media, and just it brought back that time. And living in DC then was kind of crazy because I just remember there were constant like concerts and festivals on the mall of these bands, you know, playing anti-war and anti-Bush songs, and I wasn't lumping this record in with that, but it's clear looking back now that it's very much like a response to that time. So
Yeah, I think that's sort of, when you look at the lyrics to some of the songs, the sort of the cynical tone, the dark tone of a lot of the songs was of that time feeling. And especially when, if you think, so Mike, the guys would have been in their mid to late 20s.
right.
And when I think about kind of when I was in my mid to late 20s, I was also kind of feeling a
Young
little
and depressed.
bit, seriously though,
Yeah.
feeling that you that some of that idealism that you had of your youth starts to wear, and you're like, you do feel a little bit helpless, that you don't like, everything is happening, you have little control over what's going on.
Yeah.
And we'll get into some of those concepts in some of the songs a little later, but 2005 did feel like Bush was in the middle of his second term, and or maybe, I guess he had just started his
Right.
his second term, which was a significant bummer.
As I've said on the pod before, I distinctly remember the morning
Yeah.
after the election, you
Yeah.
leaving me a lengthy voicemail in college, just like mentally processing what was happening.
I don't remember. I don't remember that.
You were like, you will be 26 when he is done with his presidency. Think about that, or something like that. And I was like, yeah.
I remember that Dana and I were. So this was my sophomore year in college, and we saw that the next morning that John Kerry had conceded, and we both went to chapel that morning after hearing the news, and Dana was just sort of quietly crying, and just that like helplessness that you were like, why are people, and that was also the election it was the family values election.
Yeah.
That was the issue that swayed people. But it seems like a more innocent time
Yeah, right.
now.
It's so wild to look back on that and be like, oh, there was no problems.
I mean,
there were problems, to be clear, but
the illegal war
yes,
in Iraq, and
a problem.
that sort of thing. But for me, 2005 was a pretty significant year. I went to first semester on Martha's Vineyard at this music school, and spent a semester writing and recording some music.
Perhaps we'll hear some of that in a bit.
I think we definitely will. So in our last episode, we talked about how I'd spent that semester of 2003 in the fall in Sweden, and then this semester I was on Martha's Vineyard, which might sound like really great because it's this little island and it's full of like rich people and it's
Kennedy's.
Kennedy's, and that's the association. But this was from January until April or May.
Freezing balls.
Freezing balls across Martha's Vineyard. There's literally there are very few people who live there year round. So it was snowy, it was cold, it was mostly deserted. So in a way, it was one of the best ways that you could write music.
Sure.
Just feeling sort of secluded with not a whole bunch of distractions. And that's when I started doing a lot of my serious political writing and getting into... I brought with me this giant book of all of the collected writings of Martin Luther King Jr. And so I was like, all right, this is my inspiration. And I just would sometimes take phrases and use them as the lyrics in some of my songs. And I named one of my songs after one of his books. I think he had a book called Strength to Love, and that was one of the songs that I wrote and recorded while I was there, and it was something that I felt very proud of. But unfortunately, towards the end of the semester, the person who was engineering me, something had happened with her external hard drive where we had kept the original recording and it got lost, and so we had to re-record it, and sort of in a quick fashion. But
Yikes.
but still, I think it turned out really well.
Yeah, man.
So
I have this memory, a quick interjection of one of the...
I'm just gonna quick interjection.
Crack it open. Yeah.
Boom. Yeah.
Good times are flowing here in my basement.
Yeah. Satan in my car with a flask, sipping from a flask.
I should have. We have a very special app with Daniel Leary, aka MxPx memes, coming up.
Yes.
But I should have asked him. He didn't actually think those were the words, did he?
Yeah, we should have asked him.
He seems like pretty insistent about it. I'm like, I think you're just joking, but
it's pretty. I think it's pretty funny considering the amount of people that are like, oh, they're not Christian anymore.
Yeah,
but
Satan in his car,
Satan in his
drinking
car
from a flask, just embracing the criticism.
Yep.
No, I was just gonna say, yeah, the one of the last Tiger Jack songs that never got recorded was inspired by the Langston Hughes poem, where he says, "What happens to a dream deferred? Does it do this or this?" And then it ends with, "Or does it explode?" And very pretentiously, I called that last song ... or does it explode? Which I thought was super dope at the time. And looking back, I'm like, not sure I can invoke Langston Hughes as a, privileged white kid. But still, I feel like I was in the same mental headspace as you with the King influence there.
I mean, that because one of the things that I was drawing on King specifically from him was this... as somebody, as a person of faith, and as someone who was preaching nonviolence, which was one of my critiques and frustrations with my growing awareness of the evangelical right, was the conflation of Christianity, nationalism, and violence and war, and somehow having all of that lumped together. And I rejected that. And on some of my early readings, that being exposed to MLK in my early teens and throughout college, was this: he was nonviolent and a person of faith, and he rejected the militarism, and a lot of people like to do this sort of revisionist history about how everybody loved Martin Luther King, And it's like, bro, he was assassinated,
Yeah.
and he did not get a lot of love
No.
for his criticism of the Vietnam War.
No.
So we can't just look back with these rose-colored glasses and pretend that everybody was on board with him.
Right.
And
that he was just this like nice guy.
Yeah.
He was a radical.
yeah, he was a radical. And these same people that were like, who like to talk about how great he is, but then at the same time will get pissed about people shutting down roads and bridges for protests. It's like,
Right.
bro, that's like that's literally from his handbook.
I would like to call a moratorium on, well, I think what Dr. King would say about this.
Yep, that is...
No more, please.
Let's please not...
Unless you're like John Lewis or whatever. No doing that.
I think the only people who can say that are people with the last name King
Yeah.
and John Lewis, and people who actually marched with him and were friends with him. So I think, to sum it up, shut the fuck up. So
Well said.
on that note, let's hear a little bit of
I'm so excited.
Strength to Love.
The shreds, dude. Yeah. The pit is about to open.
Let's go!
So good.
The warhawk fascist side is successful, you must fight. Must kill the opposition with a bomb, a gun, a knife. These pimps and governments try to take us all to war. They try and sell us lies to fight their battles like they're whores. They spread their fear of propaganda by way of daily news. They call it fair balance, thinking we don't have a clue. Well, I've got news for them, and they've got nowhere to hide. 'Cause I'm gonna fight back, within their heart, and tough mind. Toughness of the serpent, softness of the dove, tender hearts of mine, and a strength to love. Hey! Hey! Let's go! Love your brother, love your sister, be non-violent. Resistor, love your enemy and your neighbor. Love your God and love your Savior. If you see people as impersonal cogs in a never-turning wheel, then your heart will never love, 'cause you've no capacity to feel. So just become numbers that are counted when they die, and the only justice you believe in is the cutting gets dropped from the sky. Toughness of the serpent.
We, when we were listening to this earlier, I said we hit up Andrew's delivery corner at some point in there.
We do.
I can't remember if that was that part or not.
No, it's
That's later.
Impersonal cogs in an ever-turning wheel.
Yes.
That is a quote. The reason it sounds so weird
I like it.
is it's lifted from Strength to Love.
Oh, cool.
So that's, like I said, I took, there's some lines. He says, from Strength to Love, Martin Luther King Jr. writes, "The hard-hearted individual never sees people as people, but rather as mere objects or as impersonal cogs in an ever-turning wheel."
That's awesome. This ties in so well to what we were saying in the intro segment about like reducing people to issues, supposedly.
Yeah. And so I remember when I wrote these lyrics and I presented the song to my other classmates and to my teachers, and I read them, because that was part of the songwriting process, is that you would read the lyrics of something that you had just written and sort of explain it. And and so some of my lines, tender heart, tough mind, and the strength to love, toughness of a serpent, softness of a dove. And they're like, is this they're sort of off, put off by like, this is a punk song, but what is this? And so, these are, again, direct quotes from his chapter, A Tough Mind and a Tender Heart. It is pretty difficult to imagine a single person having simultaneously the characteristics of the serpent and the dove, but this is what Jesus expects. We must combine the toughness of the serpent and the softness of a dove, a tough mind and a tender heart.
So good.
And so I just rereading some of these quotes and thinking about these, Chapter 2, transformed nonconformists.
So good.
Jesus is a radiant light revealing the ugliness of our stale conformity. I mean,
those are punk lyrics, Dr. King.
He is punk AF.
Always has been.
So,
dude, if I have not said it already, that song is legit. Like, all the stuff about, Tiger Jack is so good, this is so embarrassing. Like, this is really good. So
I appreciate that. It's
well done, sir.
It gives me that feeling of nostalgia thinking about playing those live shows, and because that was on Martha's Vineyard when I was at that school, it was one of the first times I had experienced playing with a live full band, and it was like the best feeling in the world.
So Tiger Jack reunion, Andrew and his dudes, band reunion, morning after maybe.
Yeah,
but I think a reunion needs to happen. These songs need to be played live.
That'd be so fun.
I think we also need to hear the ending of the song.
Okay. We need to hear the Andrew's delivery corner.
Well, and the beautiful scream that comes at the end.
We could start thinking non-violently, then hey, baby, can I see some brother get out till they be free?
I think that was it.
We could start thinking non-violently, then hey, baby, can I see some brother get out till they be free?
Yeah. Where's that scream at?
So that's at the very end. So the words are, if we could all start thinking non-violently, then maybe we could actually solve some problems without killing anyone. We'd all truly be free.
Sure.
So, yeah.
I definitely hear the propaganda influence in there.
Yeah, I think that was around the first time I started listening to propaganda. So yeah, here we'll get to my.
Yes.
Wait for it.
So good. It puts the pained scream in. Was that slowly? I can't even remember.
Oh yeah.
It's a shame. You really.
Well, you can truly hear the flesh marks on my heart.
Yes. The veins popping, the flesh marks.
So once the people at my school learned that I had that proclivity towards screaming, I was brought on for another song, another like this slow piano jam, and then like I came in at the end of the song and just like started doing my like super like metal emo scream for the song. And
I love it
because the first time they performed it at the performance night that we had, I was standing off stage and like just like in the hallway, and then when my part came, I just walked in, picked the microphone up off the floor, and just started.
So great. I miss those days.
Yeah.
I remember thinking like when we would record or practice or whatever, like, and then I'll scream like just as hard as I can, and then doing it live and being like, oh, this is not sustainable. Like I can't do this repeatedly. I don't know how people do it.
No, it's hard, and it's a muscle too, because if you're not screaming or anything on a regular basis, it goes away.
I usually scream a few times a day.
When you just like the blood curdling. Go to bed.
Yeah, shout out to the second obscure punk documentary I'm going to plug on this pod.
Okay,
I don't
let's hear
remember
it.
the name of this, but there was this vocal coach who was infamous for she was like this famous.
Oh right.
Yeah, but she was the coach for all these like screamo and hardcore singers, and she like taught them how to sing properly so that they didn't blow out their chords and everything. Anyway.
Yeah, I feel like over the course of the career of Anti-Flag, I think I've noticed Justin Sane's voice has started to go like it just doesn't. He doesn't have the scream really anymore,
Right.
and I think he's probably fucked up his vocal cords.
It's a lot of years of screaming.
Lots of years of being punk AF. It'll do it.
Well, so I think we've concluded that in 2005 you were in a very rockin' place.
That's true, and it is also the summer that Dana and I got engaged.
That's right, yeah.
So we would be married a little over a year later.
So when Before Everything and After comes out, you meet her. When
Yes.
Panic comes out, you get engaged.
Yep. And then in 2006, MxPx does nothing for me.
Well, they did release Let's Rock, so that's something. Future ep we'll discuss perhaps.
Yeah,
in
no,
more
this has
depth.
it has some good songs on it. It has the Sweet Thing / Family Affair that somebody had called out as one of their favorite. I think it was Alex Retro who said from Before Everything and After that Family Affair
Oh right,
was
yeah.
one of his joints.
Heard a couple of people say
So
that.
speaking of people's jams,
Yeah.
let's shout out what people think about Panic before we get into the play-by-play.
We put the Magnified pod signal out in the sky, and you all responded with your
Yes.
beautiful takes.
Yep.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, we appreciate it. Jason Ariano says that this is his favorite MxPx album. I don't know if we've had somebody say definitively yet
Yeah.
if something was there. Maybe someone said on the Before Everything and After was, but Jason says that he was not a huge fan of The Everpassing Moment or Before Everything and After, and those albums were just too poppy for him. But Panic has a great punk rock sound, and he called out the Five Iron Frenzy, Heard That Sound
So good.
version, and yes,
That bodes well for the EP coming with the
EP.
horns. I'm excited about that.
Unequivocally will be on that. So speaking of Alex Retro, he got this album for his 15th birthday, and he said, "What the heck? This doesn't sound like the songs on my Let It Happen and 10 Years in Running CDs.
No.
It sounds too dark and less positive." And that is on the nose. That is correct.
Yeah. I'm here for dark MxPx.
Yeah.
Let me say that.
But he said that it quickly he loved the new style, and he says it's in his top 3.
Yeah.
So not people are saying it's not in their, it's in their top 5, but he says top 3.
I'm pretty confident about saying top 5 for me.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm confident as well. Somebody else, Mr. Benji Martin, said it used to be his 3rd after Buffalo and Life in General, but that all changed last Tuesday.
Yeah, big day.
So
That's
got
when
a
the new record came out.
little shifting. And Rich from the Poking at You podcast loved it so much. Darkest Places is insane. Waiting is a great song this weekend. And he said initially it was an Arthur song, and I haven't heard that version of
Yeah.
Arthur. Some people are calling out the Arthur influence.
Yeah, a lot of people mention Arthur. This is probably the time for us to hang our heads in shame and say we don't know Arthur super well.
No, I missed the Arthur boat in high school. I had one buddy who was into Arthur, but
It was hard to find the EP.
Yeah.
I felt like it was. And then like I said, I missed the last 3 records, so I completely missed that they even did the LP. And now I feel like that's hard to find too. But anyway, we'll talk about Arthur later.
Yep. Jeff French says this one grew on him and sits as number 4.
Mm-hmm.
And our buddy Josh Aguilera says that it's the first MxPx album that he owned on CD, and it blew his mind.
Yeah, I can see
And
that.
yeah, and somebody else said that the first time the real CJ Funk
Mm-hmm.
says that he heard it for the first time 3 years ago, and at the same time he discovered all the later years records, Before Everything and After, Plans Within Plans. He loved Panic immediately, and it's his fave of those 4 for sure. Plans Within Plans, a close second.
Mm-hmm.
Riker Paul, Panic isn't my number 1, but it's definitely one of my favorites.
Mm-hmm.
Second favorite album from David Dizon?
David Bazan.
Dave Bazan.
That's so weird that he weighed in.
Yeah, no. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing your last name. But yeah, we getting a lot of Panic love.
Yeah,
Because
I like to see that.
yeah, after we talking Before Everything and After, and a lot of people were saying not so much.
Yeah, range of reactions, but I feel like it's safe to say definitely toward the bottom of the list for most
Yes.
PXPXers.
Before Everything and After, that is.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. Okay, so did you have anything else you wanted to discuss before we start talking about some of the details
I don't
of
think so.
the production?
I mean, it's clear that they're in a very different place than they were on the last record.
Yeah.
And it would be, I mean, it's interesting having listened to the new record a lot lately and then hearing this record a lot this week preparing for the show, because Panic feels more like them, but there's still a level of production sheen on it.
This is my takeaway, and so Panic is obviously produced very well.
Yeah.
It still has some great pop production on it, but it's not overdone. It's done. It has that sweet spot of production for me. And when you look at Before Everything and After, and you compare it to this one, Panic still has the production, but it still sounds raw.
Yeah.
The vocals at times feel like Mike is pushing it, and they sound a little blown out and like aggressive. And it has like one of the most hardcore songs on it since Slowly with Fist versus Tact. And I'm like, wow, we haven't heard something like this from them in years. So
I have in my notes pushing himself vocally. I think both in terms of screaming and stuff like we were saying, but also just like, I feel like his voice is really strong on this record. Like he's doing things with going between notes and stuff that he doesn't normally do. So yeah, I mean, I will say it comes right up to the line of syrupy / too produced for me sometimes, but it never crosses over. But yeah, so it's interesting hearing Mike talk about the new record and saying that feels like the first time really where it sounds like them without anyone messing with it or putting kind of their take on it. So I can feel like Panic is close to that, but there's another influence on it too. But yeah.
And I think any of the production syrupiness that you're talking about, I 100% let slide.
Yeah.
Because the songwriting is there.
Yeah, totally.
If the songwriting were mediocre, I'd be like, I think the production would probably have to come in and try and have to save the weak songs.
Right.
But as we've already said, I don't feel like there's a bad song on this record.
Agreed. Yeah, there's no song that like has a part in it that might make me a little wary that doesn't then save itself later. Like I feel like every song eventually goes to a place where I'm like, oh, okay, I'm in this song now. Like,
Yeah. So speaking of production, we have the likes of Steve Edgerton.
mm-hmm.
Are we assuming that's how you pronounce his name?
I believe so.
I don't know if I've ever actually heard how his name is pronounced, but I'm assuming it's that.
Yeah.
More well known for being in the Descendants and all,
Right.
but he has worked with MxPx on a number of occasions. And I, for the longest time, operated under the assumption that he was the primary producer.
We were texting about this a bit.
Yeah.
It makes sense, that narrative, because it's like, yeah, like we said, he'd work with them a fair amount. The Descendants and all feel like, I think you can sense that influence on the record.
Yeah.
He'd produced Ace Troubleshooter, like we said, Slick Shoes, Mustard Plug.
Right.
So he's very much in that world. But I
looked at the other credit. This guy, Gavin McKillop, Gavy Mac, if you will.
Big Gavy Mac.
Big old Gavy Mac. I looked in the liner notes, and he's pretty much credited for the entire album, and Stephen Edgerton only did some work on a couple songs.
Right.
And so I was like, well, who is this guy?
Yeah.
And I think because I assumed it was Stephen who did a majority of it because of the punk aesthetic, the more aggressive punk rock songs, and I thought, oh, well, that makes sense. But then when I saw it's this guy Gavin, I'm like, who the hell's Gavin?
Yeah.
And I started looking at his biography and his credits, and I was
It's
like,
interesting.
like, how did he end up as the producer?
Apparently they like sought him out, like they recruited him for it. So I don't know what the background is there.
Yeah, so he's done a lot with Toad the Wet Sprocket, Goo Goo Dolls. He did a Sarah McLachlan album.
When I think Panic, I think Sarah McLachlan.
The Rembrandts. So
Bare Naked Ladies.
You know the Rembrandts, famous for the Friends theme song.
Yes, nailed it.
I'll be there for you. But the album that came out that Gavs did right before this dropped was Rock Against Bush Volume 2 in 2004,
okay.
and Punk Goes 80s. And I'm wondering if that had something to do with it, because
he did a lot of 80s stuff too.
Yeah.
I mean, he has some punk history. Like he did a lot of the Public Image Limited records.
He did
which
that.
gives you some
Simple
cred.
Minds.
Yeah, Adamant.
Adamant, yeah.
So yeah, an interesting guy for sure.
It's not there, but in the 90s, he unequivocally was doing a lot of pop rock.
For sure.
And I was like, okay, whatever. But it sounds great. So credit where credit is due.
I'm glad. Sorry.
I'm glad it doesn't sound like you know some of the other stuff that he's done. No shitting on Toad the Wet Sprocket because Fear is a solid album.
Clearly a legit producer. Just like if I would have heard that, if I was paying attention that this was the guy they were bringing on after Before Everything, I'd be like, oh boy, like another one of those records. But
And I don't know, maybe that would have been more. That'd be a more 2018. So, because this was like pre the explosion of social media.
Yeah.
So the awareness of like that would have been one of those things. Like it would have been on the cover of every music thing that they've MxPx has secured. Gavy Mac for their latest album, and we'd be like, who the hell's Gavy Mac? And then I think that might have soured our. Be like, oh well, and then we might have gone into the album looking for things to criticize.
Right. It's interesting that this is the first record with Side One Dummy back on an indie label.
Yep.
They had asked to be let go from A&M. I think I had heard that like they felt like they weren't getting the attention that they wanted there. So it was an interesting move. I mean, Side One Dummy did a lot of punk stuff, I think still does. And so they were kind of looking for a new environment. And it definitely feels, I mean, we'll get into the influences, but you can tell Mike has always super been into Social Distortion, and you can hear the Social D influence throughout the album. Like there's kind of that country cowpunk feel on some songs.
Yeah.
We'll get into one in particular, but yeah, it feels a little more like what they had always said they'd been influenced by here.
Yeah, and you'll hear on our bonus episode later this week with Daniel Leary from MxPx Memes, his take on Joe Sib and what he thinks where Joe played a role in this album with MxPx. Joe Sib being the one of the founders of Side One Dummy. So shall we get into it? So track 1, The Darkest Places, Panic, MxPx, boom. Country's in a panic when I turn on the tube. Whoa.
Yeah.
So this song
is really good.
So good.
Yeah.
Starts off in the absolute opposite way of Before Everything and After. No wasting time. Starts off with the floor toms and it sounds great. The drums on this album.
Slide.
Yeah, pick slides, everything.
Yeah.
Into the chorus, boom.
So good.
So good.
Yeah, so top 3 songs we'll talk about, but this is my number 1. Like, and this is the first song has been my favorite song on 3 of the last 4 records we've done.
Wow.
Which is interesting. And the new album, I think, but we'll get into that later. Like, yeah, I didn't know this song at all really until really recently, and now it's one of my favorite MxPx songs. Like, I love it.
That's a big deal.
It's so driving. The chorus is so great, like you were saying. They're talking about politics again. They're talking about unions.
Yes.
Like, this feels so great.
There will be cynics holding clinics about where we have been with every self-proclaimed historian.
So great.
You know, some of the lyrics in this album.
Say, you're straining to read those because they're so tiny.
Yeah, I'm straining to read these because if we want to get into this too, might as well, since you brought it up.
Sorry, didn't mean to derail you.
No, it's because this is we're talking about the entirety of the record, and I do like the cover art.
Yeah, it's cool.
But the lyrics printed in this booklet are so obnoxiously small for whatever reason. I don't know why this was designed this way. The art is really cool. I like the dark, like almost living in a post-apocalyptic world. There are tanks. Mike and the guys are like standing in the street with moths flying through. Like, obviously this is like some sort of plague analogy or symbolism.
Something bad's going down.
Or, you know, deterioration of cities. They're kind of, you see bits of color of what the cities and places used to look like, but the bridges are falling apart. So
yeah,
it's
shout out to Seth Roberts, who commented on our post that he He did the work for it, the design work, and he said the businessman on the cover is him. So big ups to you, Seth. Well done.
Oh, snap. John, I'm conflicted because in one of the episodes I called an audible the day of about, I think it was Ever Passing Moment, that I had changed one of my top 3, and I'm having a really hard time because I'm really thinking about making the darkest
Switching
places. But I think I've got to say it's in my top 4.
Sure.
But it's hard because I want to say it, but
Yeah.
I don't want to be that guy who's just like,
What if my rhetorical powers are so convincing that I just swayed you to including it? That would be fine too.
that would be acceptable as well. Do you have anything else to say about
I don't
Dark
think
Places?
so.
You want to move on to Young and Depressed?
I'm ready.
You've got so many problems, no one else but you can solve them. Where did the time go? Everybody wants to know. Life goes on day after day after day. Too much work and no play. When life seems like it can't get harder. When you feel like a martyr. When you've lost all control. That's when you let the whole world know you're young and depressed. With no future in this loneliness. You're young and depressed. But you're pretty well dressed. Yeah, you're pretty well dressed.
God, that riff is
The riff
so
is
great.
so perfect. And this is one of the things that I had with some of Before Everything and After, that the riffs on this album are strong.
Yeah.
They come out the gate really solid, and they're memorable, and you have to air guitar along with them.
You must.
You must.
Yeah, this is my number 2.
Number 2.
I love it.
Yeah, there's nothing. So when you are looking through at the lyrics of this song, what do you take? What are you taking from it?
I mean, it definitely. You've talked before about Mike referencing potential mental illness issues,
Yes.
and like when you said it, I was like, yeah, I guess so. But this album,
Yes,
we've left.
it's rife.
We've left the vocab corner, the delivery corner, the emo corner, maybe, but we're firmly in the crazy and depressed corner throughout this album.
So I feel like now might be a time for me to sort of address something I said in the Before Everything and After episode, or maybe I just didn't phrase it in the way I've been thinking about it. Like,
yeah, I didn't mean to make it weird, but
what?
just like that. Yeah, I assume you're going to talk about the mic thing.
Yeah, like how I was saying that, like, based on some of the lyrics and the things he said, and I referred to it in Well Adjusted, how everything's like, getting a lobotomy, he's in a mental penitentiary, he's being strapped down, and I was thinking, like, this, if somebody is not struggling with mental illness or some sort of anxiety or something, that would be kind of a weird topic to address. And so I think I said something along the lines of, I maybe sound weird, but I hope that's the case, and he's not just like. And of course, I don't want Mike or anybody to suffer from mental illness. Of course not. I mean, I have had my own mental illness issues. I take medication for anxiety and depression, and many years of panic attacks and things like that. So it's not something I wish on anybody.
Yeah.
I think in the execution and the writing on this album, on the topic of mental illness, and it's just much stronger.
Yeah, it's a lot.
And he talks about it a lot, and I don't know if it's just maybe that's where he was at in this time, and maybe that's why the tone is darker, because it's not just the world, but maybe there's more.
Yeah, it is weird, like we said. I mean, the last record is so positive and syrupy. We said there's a lot of love songs.
Yeah.
This
and
is
2
like
years later.
Yeah, 2 years later, less love songs and more like there's a lot of songs about like relationship fights. And there's also
even like the love song. If you want to, we'll get to Wrecking Hotel Rooms, but if you even want to call that a love song, even the tone of that song is much darker.
I feel like, whereas on Before Everything and Ever Passing Moment, there were similar sentiments expressed as in this song, but they came off as emo. Here it feels darker and more like classically punk in a way that I can get down with more easily.
Yeah. I hope I've been thinking about it the past week.
He's pissed, by the way. He texted me.
It's not something I wish on him or anyone. So my apologies for if anybody was offended by that. That was just poorly phrased. But anyway, no one even said anything, but it's just more like self-acknowledging that's like I have issues with anxiety and depression. Why would I say that? But I guess maybe just because I'm sensitive to it.
Sure.
But whatever.
No, I mean,
I think I've belabored the point. But.
Sure. I was just going to say I have spent a lot of time in therapy, and I see the benefits of that, and I didn't immediately connect. Like when you said he talks about being crazy a lot, I was like, yeah, but that's punk. But I think that's before I had really gotten into this record, and he definitely explores some heavy subject matter. But this one is not in your top 3 though, correct?
Young and Depressed, no.
Man, my top 2 are spent, and you haven't included either.
It's hard. This album is hard.
Agreed.
And so I think we should move on to the next song, which is in my top 3. Heard That Sound.
Without a window to say flow, I did my time in here without you. Slept on the floor down and out they say, lead me back home under the marquee. It seems like misery loves misery, but my favorite songs, they keep me company. So many memories come down to this. I may be lost, but I'm not hopeless. I heard that sound a mile away. I heard that sound a mile away. All those things I wish that I could say. I heard that sound a mile away. A mile away. Came in like static off the TV.
Yeah, so this would probably be my number 1.
Interesting. It's not on my list.
No.
It feels a little more in the Before Everything mold to me, but I really like it. I feel like, again, it's such a hooky chorus. By the time we get to the chorus, I'm like, okay, I'm in. And the whoa later really sell me on it.
Yeah. So it's not something that you're not feeling it?
As I said, I like all the songs on this record, and this is one of the ones that I like. But it's the first single on the record, and it feels, this and the second single, which we'll get to, feel a little more, again, like their singles, especially the past few records, tend to be my least favorite songs on the record.
Interesting.
Or maybe not always, but I feel like I can hear a single sound and I don't always respond to that, but I do. It's a really great song. Should we talk about the video?
I don't know if I've watched the Heard That Sound video.
You don't need to.
No?
All I'll say is,
Oh, no, it's the one with the driving the
Yes.
car in the desert.
yeah.
Yeah.
Are you more on board than I am?
No, I because it's funny because it's almost like Wrecking Hotel Rooms picks up where that video
that's a
leaves
sequel,
off.
right?
Yeah.
It's another regrettable hair look for Mike, unfortunately.
He's got the guy liner.
The guy liner's in full effect.
Yeah.
It looks like it was shot for about $1. And yeah. So anyway, you told me, you were like, oh, we should talk about the videos. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, the videos. I'd never seen them. And I was like, what?
Yeah,
Like, I was
that's-
expecting for this song to be, I mean, especially coming after like the videos for the new record, which are so
Yeah.
good so far.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, oh, this is not what I expected at all.
No, because it's also so what I understand from these lyrics, it seems to be kind of about maybe the early days of loving music and not being able to get into a show or sleeping somewhere just so I mean I don't know what slept on the floor down on LBC is.
I even like looked that up and I
Yeah.
was like, I don't.
I don't know what LBC is. Hit us
Well,
up if you know what LBC is.
LBC is Long Beach, California, per Snoop Dogg. I think this
Okay.
is LEC.
It says in the lyrics, it says LBC.
Maybe he's talking about Long Beach.
Maybe he's in Long Beach. He's
I don't think so. Yeah, it does say LBC. I don't know. It's probably some Bremerton club that people are listening and going like, "Ugh, how do you guys not know this?"
yeah. Well, we're sorry. We live in Chicago. We're not hip to all the Bremerton lingo. But sat outside the show with nowhere else to go. Doors shut, can't see. It sure does sound good to me. Whoa. So I don't know. Maybe it's to me. It sort of sounds like he's maybe early years of music, not being able to get into a show. I don't know. Maybe I'm not understanding the lyrics, but to me it's a great song, and especially with the 5 iron horns, it's dope.
Yeah. No, I like it.
Those cold streets, John.
I hear the cold streets calling me. I hear the cold streets call my name. I feel the dark tide swallow me, and now the black ink covers me. My mind won't stop screaming, 'cause I don't feel so alive. This is wrong, not right. I'm all alone tonight, and I'm still dreaming. When will the cold streets fade away?
Boom.
Really good.
Really good.
This could have made my list. It did not, but
Yeah, it didn't.
Close.
It didn't make mine either.
the chorus is so good.
It is, and there's a couple songs on the album. I don't think he's talking about actual streets. I'm getting, this isn't to me another one of those. Obviously, he's talking about my mind won't stop screaming, and to me it almost seems like maybe the cold streets are a depression or something he can't break free from. When will they fade away? When will the sun come back again? That's to
Tough
me.
times.
To me, it's like he's talking about the dark and the light.
Yeah.
But it's
Yeah, I mean, I can feel the Social D influence on this one for sure. It's kind of got those like hardcore chords, but it's slower as a song. So it
Oh,
feels,
sure, yeah.
Yeah, and then the kind of like guitar solos in there.
the guitar sounds on this record are great.
Yeah.
The tone is great.
For sure.
So well done, Tom.
Yeah.
shredding. So let's move on to the story.
Can they get a new head? 'Cause the one I've got is worn out and so very broken. And now my mind feels dead. It's like an arcade game. An arcade game that won't take a token. No, we get lost along the way. It happens every day. Lost along the way. How will the story end? Where does the time go? How will the story end? All we really want to know. How will this life end? How will the story end? Where does the time go? How will the story end? All we really want to know. How will our lives end? Can they get a new song? The one I got's been trampled on. Pushing the ball.
My number 3.
Boom. Yeah, it's a bummer of a song.
Yeah.
It really is a bummer, and it really makes me feel for 2005 Mike.
Yeah.
And
He needs a new head.
so the arcade game line has always struck me as like a little
I agree.
kind of a weird simile, but
He's going for it.
he's going for it, and it works. I understand it's his lyrical choice, but he said did you listen to his most recent podcast?
Yeah. Which is really good, by the way.
Really good.
We should
Check
check
out
it
My
out.
Career podcast. But he said in the interview, he said two things that were striking to me. One is he said that most MxPx albums are too long,
Yes.
and
Agreed.
also, so that made me feel a little vindicated.
Yes.
And it's like, okay, so it's not just us saying,
Right.
cut a couple songs, bruh.
Yeah.
But also, he said that he's not the best lyricist, and I wouldn't say Mike's a bad lyricist
No.
by any stretch, but I think with a line like an arcade game that won't take a token,
Yeah. It stood out to me as well.
yeah. But
He
Yeah,
matures
so what is-
as time goes on. Freezing
is-
balls, etc.
what is it about the song that?
I mean, the intro is a
Oh,
big part of
God.
it. It's very intricate. It's surprising. It almost reminds me of Slowly in that way, where it's like these little intricate parts that you're just kind of like, oh, wow, I wasn't expecting that. And again, it's kind of got a hardcore sound, but it's slower. Like it's more metal-y. I don't know. I like the bridge a lot. It incorporates that intro riff again. I'm into the vibe on this song. I like that it kind of like builds up with the bridge after kind of like this metal-y
Yeah.
pre-chorus. Anyway,
God, I'm having some top 3 regrets here.
there's still time to make things right.
I know. But I heard that sound, but I also really like the story.
Yeah.
God,
I heard that sound. I mean, yeah, we'll get into it. Heard that sound in Wrecking Hotel Rooms. Both songs that I like feel more, I don't know. The story like exemplifies this record for me a little bit, where it's just
Yeah.
like dirty and dark, and those songs feel like a little more hopeful and poppier. And
Yeah.
anyway,
Yeah.
nothing wrong with that.
No, and I guess I'm just gonna lean into it because Wrecking Hotel Rooms is my number 2.
All right.
I rent your hotel room. I crashed up the car. Slept in the gutter. I'm outside your door. Saw you through the keyhole. Down on your knees. There's really no reason to call the police. Do
So one of the reasons I chose this song is because of the unbelievable ease with which I find myself doing alternate harmonies, which is why that's one of the things that I find with my top three is do I find myself singing along with this jam?
That chorus, it's pretty hard not to.
It's hard,
sing
and
along.
The chorus, the melody, the harmonies, they're just so good, and it makes me think of it makes me feel like this is almost kind of like an alternate Move to Bremerton kind of feel to it. How that's Move to Bremerton, it's considered a classic MxPx song, but there's also just a slight amount of cheese to the song.
Yeah.
And Wrecking Hotel Rooms, it has some cheese to it, but the guitar sound and also the opening drums. The bass sounds great.
Yeah. I mean, we should say, so Mark Hoppus came up with that opening riff.
It does have a blink.
It feels very blinky.
It feels
that
very
riff,
blink.
in a good way, but it's distinct. And he also does the backing vocals on the chorus, which also feels blinkish. So yeah, I mean, it feels to me like
It's like a Blink collab.
Yeah, it feels like Before Everything kind of tracked me, like in the sense that you can imagine how the production on that record would have tipped this over into cheesy.
Yeah.
I don't think it gets there. There's some cheese, but like it just feels like a good song. It's definitely like in the emotional emo. It almost sounds like Get Up Kids kind of territory to me, like the kind of emo that doesn't grate on me, but that I just feel into.
But they also have a sexy pool party in the music video.
Gosh. Yeah, so I think they spent their other dollar on that video. But I never.
They go in and they're literally going into a hotel and wrecking this hotel, but it's
like a motel.
Yeah, you're right. It is a dirty, dusty motel in the middle of the desert. But it also has, this was 2005, but it also has very much a late 90s, early 2000s theme where it's like, here's this nerdy person who is immediately sexy when they take out their hair and their glasses or whatever.
I knew as soon as I saw her that she was going to whip her clothes off by the end of the video. It just had that vibe. It felt like a Blink video, but like cheaper.
Yes.
Yeah, I'd never seen either of those videos, and I was bummed to see that this was a continuation of the other one. But
I'm not feeling super happy about my top three right now.
It's good. Hey, the riff that goes into the bridge, the like do 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 do, is so good. Man.
Yeah. Ding, ding, ding.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah. And it's one of the reasons this album is so good is because it doesn't have any throwaway guitar parts. They all seem very, very well done. So
maybe you can regroup.
I don't know.
By the end of the app.
I'm feeling.
We'll see where you're at.
I'm feeling very.
Just let the song speak to you.
Yeah.
Let the spirit move. Oof.
Going to church.
Take me there, Mike.
Cause I'm still late again. When they call my name outside those gates, I'll be on my way. But that's all I can say. Cause I'm late again. Forgive me for it, for I am late again. Till the day I die, Lord knows I'll try. Cause I'm still late again.
I like this song a lot.
Me too.
And I think someone commented on one of our posts that they referred to Late Again as a throwaway song.
Yeah, disagree.
Disagree vehemently.
I get, like, it's kind of a different sound. We talk about this with Daniel on our coming up, but like it influenced Tumbledown. It's definitely that Social D kind of country punk-ish feel. So I can see if that's not your vibe, that you're not into it, but that's very much my vibe. I love the like cowpunk thing, so
Yeah,
I'm into it.
I'm into it. I love this is and the gang vocals at the end.
So good.
They're all
makes
yelling.
It for me. There's a key change.
There's a key change. Yeah, that goes in into a key change gang vocal.
Yeah,
that's
the best kind of key change as far as I'm concerned.
So we should call out that Andy Husted, the original guitarist from MxPx before Tom joined it for Teenage Politics, is one of the boys, the Bremerton boys, on the gang vocals. And I think this isn't the only album he's come back to be part of the either the gang vocals or to do something. Yeah. So I think that's kind of cool.
That is cool.
I don't know exactly what Andy's doing these days, but
I believe he's a brewmaster.
That's rad.
Yeah.
Maybe that's how they. Maybe the next MxPx beer, Andy should be brewing it for him.
I don't want this feels like a correction waiting to happen, but I think he worked on the Secret Weapon beer.
Did he?
I could be wrong.
Okay, well, we'll have to have a correct me if I'm wrong sesh later if that's the case. But it warms the cockles of my heart to know that Andy's still doing something.
For sure. I don't know what we have to do to get in some gang vocals, but
oh man,
I assume by the next album we'll be in there too.
I'll just send Mike my cut of Strength to Love and be like, hey bro, what's the problem?
He will be in.
He is in it to win it.
We can tell him we keep coming up with additional harmonies to songs that already have like 3 parts. So
I got 6-part harmony on this.
Yeah, I mean the bridge even kind of has that minor 4 progression, like ever passing moment. There's a lot going on here. I don't know Tumbledown super well. I think that'll be another future up for us.
We're gonna hit on the Tumbledown, but before we even get to Tumbledown or Arthur, we've got to work our way through
we'll get there.
As we will say, the EP eps or the EP eps.
Yeah. Last thing I'll say, as someone who's perpetually late, I can relate. I hear you, Mike. We're all doing our best.
Doing our
late
best.
People.
And he says he was late trying to put this record out. I'll say, for one, I'm glad that if you are perpetually late, Mike, I'm glad you weren't late putting out the new album.
No, right on time.
Right on time, just in the nick. Ooh, so dirty.
Love it.
Time and maybe I'll believe you. Promise me the world and what you're saying now is true. You can't hold me down. Kicking and screaming like a child. I'm out of control, I'm running wild. Kicking and screaming, I want more. I've done things you can't ignore. So drag me around, sweep me out the door.
Man, Mike, who hurt you? Stabbed me in the back. Grown accustomed to the feeling.
Tough times.
Yeah.
That opening riff is almost Pocanatcha-esque.
It
feels very like
this
again the
kicking
like
and
metally,
screaming, and then another song coming up later. It's the most hardcore that they've been, I think, since I would say, and dirty since Pocanatcha.
Yeah, I'm ready for it.
I'm ready for it. Do you have any other? Do you have anything else to say about? I don't really have much to say about this song other than it's great.
Yeah, it's solid. I wasn't one of the ones that I'm like, oh, this came close to being on my list, but I like it a lot.
I'm consistently seeing a pattern where the openings of just about every song are so
Yeah.
solid.
Yeah.
They're so solid. And I think every time we start a new song, I'm like, oh gosh, this needs to be in my top 3. And then I feel like I make a mistake every time by not doing it.
Yeah, it's a good record.
But I haven't felt this way since probably life in general, where I'm like, I can't choose. It's hard to choose a top 3.
I'm with you.
So
More drum machine joy. Love those keys.
Yep. I liked them as much as I did on the Renaissance EP with the song The Opposite.
Should we hear that? Yeah.
Yeah. We'll talk Renaissance EP. We don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but
I like that one too, but this sounds fuller.
It does.
I like
well,
this.
yes. This.
I mean, not just production wise, but I like where the keys are doing musically more on this one too.
Yeah. It does feel like a recycled Renaissance EP cut, but I'm not complaining because both of those songs are really good.
I think the keys make this one for me. If they weren't in it, I'm not sure I would be into this one that much. It feels a little like Before Everything territory to me. Like the keys, I remember hearing Christmas Day, the song, which came out in 98. I think it was the first one that they did. So we were saying we didn't even really know about the MxPx fan club when we were super into them.
No.
But I think they sent out a Christmas song every year, beginning in 98. Boy, I'm opening myself up to more fact checks here. But so for years they would send out these Christmas songs, and that was, I think, the first one. And then the Christmas album is the collection of those. But the keys on that one sound very similar.
Okay.
And they sounded great to me at the time. And I remember thinking, like, this was back in like the Slowly days, thinking like, oh, they should do more stuff with keys. And they didn't too much. But then when I heard this again, I was like, oh yeah, that's that sweet spot. Like, it sounds good for me. I thought this song might make your list. Was it close? No?
Yes. John, you don't need
All
to
the songs are close.
You can't keep turning the knife on me. Okay?
This one feels like it should have been another single. I'm surprised. I don't think it was. They did do a video for it, ?
The only singles are Heard That Sound in Wrecking Hotel Rooms, which makes me feel like a fake fan that my two of my three are.
You just know, I mean, they probably agreed with you that those are some of the stronger songs.
Yeah.
They did a video for this one too, but I'm not sure that it even counts as a video. It's like an acoustic version of the song and like home video footage almost. I don't know. But yeah, of the songs on this record, this feels like I knew this one already from like shows and stuff. This seems like one that's kind of entered the canon. So I thought maybe it'd be on your list or it would have been a single, but no.
It's another one of those songs that feels like a mental health, emotional well-being kind of Gray Skies Turn Blue. That another, he refers to himself as crazy in the song. So, but I think he's digging into the real stuff in this album.
Yeah.
All right.
It's not all driving down the Hollywood streets. It's not all
cruising down Chico Way.
No, he needs a new head in this one.
Or being a king of Hollywood.
Ooh.
Stack your bricks up to the sky. sky. Name each one, then throw them high. The trouble with trouble is it comes down fast. So watch out where you're going or you just won't last. Whoa, you're an emotional anarchist. You're pissed cause you've never been kissed. You're drowning in a sea of anarchy with your heart upon your patches and a faith in democracy. Cover your eyes and plug your ears.
This is my number 3.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Then maybe you can tell me what it's about.
So my understanding of this song is very limited, but because I don't understand a lot of what Mike says all the time. But one of the first things that struck me about this song is the brevity. It's barely 2 minutes long, and the chorus is so great, and it's the first time I feel like they are starting to flirt with, he says you're pissed because you've never been kissed.
Yeah.
And so it's like this first time they're like, oh, we're going to start.
Naughty.
Yeah, I mean, but even in the lyrics booklet, they spell pissed, P-I-S-T.
Oh, weird.
So I don't know why.
That feels
why.
very like MySpace or something.
Yeah, it does.
Normally I feel like we ask the question, is he conflating God with a girl on this song? And this one I'm like, is he conflating politics with a girl or love? Like, I feel like there's a metaphor there that I'm just not totally grasping. Like, what is the heart upon your patches and no faith in democracy? Like, does that mean like, if she, presuming it's a she, had faith in democracy, would that mean like their relationship could thrive? But since she's an anarchist, it's just like an unstable relationship.
Maybe, because that's like you're drowning in a sea of anarchy, and I don't know, maybe it's like we're assuming pronouns here, but you pissed because you've never been kissed. I don't know. This is an
Sounds like an incel. Sorry, keep going.
I don't know. I could only speculate, and no one wants to hear me try and speculate what the song's about.
But yeah, hit us up with your emotional anarchist theories.
Yeah, but I like this idea of like, cover your eyes, plug your ears. We've been lied to all these years.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, I don't know. I'm not feeling very good about my top 3 this episode. I'll say it again.
No, I think it's clearly exploring some interesting territory. I'm just like, I want to get there with him, and I feel like I can't quite.
Yeah. I feel like I need to do an alternate top 3 and just be like, these were my gut reaction top 3.
Sure.
But this next song will make my alternate top 3. This song has the sort of the love song quality of some of the songs from Before Everything and After.
For sure.
But the execution of it
Yeah.
is better.
The verses feel like Before Everything territory to me, but I like the bass line a lot in the intro and in the sections leading into the verses. And then, yeah, they feel very like Rancid-y, kind of like Rolling Strong, where it's like going all over the neck. And
yeah. And, you know, when on Before Everything and After, they talk about in Kings of Hollywood about being, you know, left coast punk.
Yeah.
That's what they are. And it's like, no, you can't claim that on one of the least punk rock songs on the album.
Mm-hmm.
But for something like this song, yeah, even though it might have a Before Everything and After vibe, if it were produced that way, yeah. But this song does feel like they could even still say, yeah, we're left coast punk, because the song,
it sounds really good.
The bass sounds great, and Yuri crushes it on the drums in this song. I love this part.
I like
too.
this part a lot. With the way that the way the chord progression goes up.
Yeah.
I like that a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of good tom work. On the drums, I mean. Also Tom Wisniewski.
Yeah, Tom Wisniewski and those
drums,
floor toms.
Yeah.
This is one of this song, because of the drums and that bridge.
Yeah, for sure. The bridge is great.
It's very solid.
Yeah.
And now we're going to get to the most hardcore song
Give it to me.
since this first tact.
I don't wanna move. I just wanna lay here. Shaky hands, sweaty shades. Can't get my mind, can't get my legs. Went up 3 hours ago. Blanks that don't care what you think you know. Get me out! Get me out! Get me out! Get me out! Get
Oh, gosh. It was really hard for me to leave this out of my top 3. I love this
So
song.
can I tell you this was on my top 3 until yesterday.
Yeah.
And I literally replaced this song with the polar opposite. I replaced Get Me Out with Wrecking Hotel Rooms.
This record has versatility.
I know. I mean, I was listening to this album today, and Dana, my wife, she was like, "Is this MxPx?"
Doesn't sound
I'm
like it.
like, yeah, and she was like, "This sounds really different." I'm like, "Yeah, it is. It's actually, they don't write a lot of songs like this anymore."
It's not even... I mean, it's got like a dirtier, fuzzier sound, but not even in a Poconacha way. Like, it feels really different, and it's another one that like I'm with it, but then when it gets to the chorus of the like then I'm like, oh man, I am hooked on this. Yeah, I'm super into it. And then he's got a great metal scream, much like yours toward the end of the song.
Yeah, and couple that with the heavy breathing.
Yeah, I can't quite decide how I
Dropping
feel
on the
about
microphone.
that, but I'm kind of into it.
He's exhausted.
Yeah, well, took a lot out.
Yes.
Drawing closer and dark days, with much still left undone. Even as I turn this phrase, the end has now begun. History is history. Tomorrow
like this one a lot.
Yep. This is a song that I was seeing people say they like this song a lot.
I could see that.
Yeah.
It feels pretty representative of the album.
Yeah, I think this to me feels like the album song.
Yeah.
If you were to say what's this album about, this feels like it.
Yeah.
That kind of a hopelessness, recognizing that the world is going to end. Maybe this is the only life we have. This is stop making excuses, enjoy your moments, but that things are shit, and just do things that you love.
Yeah. I remember when we did our episode with Jason Hockney-Simon, and he was saying that Panic was his favorite record, and that was before I had really spent a lot of time with it, and I was kind of like, wow, like taken aback. And he was like, I just love the like dark place that it comes from, and like how he was thinking about the world at the time. And hearing the record now, like it's not my favorite, but it's up there. Like I really like this album, and I feel like this song is representative of it musically and like thematically, lyrically. So I like there's a big build up in the bridge that like just keeps growing, and that's really great.
Yeah.
There's a distorted spoken word section in the background that feels very like emo and throwback to that era for me.
Yes.
But
so this weekend, the last song on the record is I guess it was another one of those Arthur songs that people are referring to that I haven't heard.
I tried to find it after people said that, and I couldn't find it.
Yeah,
so.
me neither.
Send us it.
A dude on this guy Nicholas on Instagram, Rock and Roll Pizzeria is his Instagram name, which is
good name.
Was a great name. He said that he loved the song, and he intentionally made it the last song he listened to before he left for basic training.
Oh yeah, that was a cool story.
In 2005, that everything about this song, he says, is perfect musically, lyrically, and I guess the content of the song, he said, would want to be something he was playing in his head for the next 2 months. And
let's hear it.
I like even though this album, as we've discussed, this sort of negative, it seems that they intentionally ended with the most positive song on the record.
Yeah, I like this one a lot. The verses come the closest to being a bummer for me. Something about the delivery, and again, the lyrics are like pretty simple, talking about going out and having a ball. I'm just a little bit like, oh boy. But then when the chorus kicks in and the Tom shouting the like in the sound, I'm just like, oh, I'm into this. So yeah, those background vocals really made it for me.
It turns me around pretty quickly.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it seems pretty cookie cutter, kind of like what do people do? They go to movies.
Right.
They talk about the sound on the stereo, and they have a good time. Some things are good, some are bad. But I think if you hang with the entire album and the sort of the dark elements on the songs, and you get to this song, you're like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
I'm good with like
Yeah.
thinking about some positive vibes.
We've talked a lot about like what makes a good MxPx album opener and closer, and like,
Yeah.
I feel like the closers are usually kind of end on this like, I don't know, this vibe that's like positive and almost kind of like fades out. Like it feels in keeping with that tradition.
Yeah, this one has more of an anthemic vibe to it than maybe some of the other ones with like these big giant gang vocals. Before everything and after, ending with "You're Not Alone." I don't know, maybe that's more of an anthem, but "Misplaced Memories" doesn't feel like much of an anthem.
Yeah.
"Southbound" is just a jam in general, but I'm much happier with. Sorry, but this chair is making noise.
That's my fault. But I was like, is that the chair?
Why aren't you greasing the chairs before
Sorry,
I get here,
guys.
John? Yeah, I'm overall from beginning to end. I don't have many complaints. Again, there are some bummers on this song, but I'm fine with it.
Yeah, I really like this album, and I am grateful to have it in my life now.
Yep.
It'll be one that I return to for sure.
Yes.
I think we panicked.
I think we
I think
panicked.
we got through it.
I think we. I'm not feeling as young and depressed anymore.
No,
but
still great.
Still good. So, I'm gonna have to. I am maybe feeling a little young and depressed about my top 3 choices, but people can give me shit. I don't know. Maybe people will say, "Oh no, those are perfectly fine," because those are some of mine too. But
sure,
you need to coddle me, make me feel better about my choices.
I don't think there's any bad songs on this album, so I don't think any of your choices are wrong.
I know it's hard,
but
it was
my
a hard
3 were
choice.
better.
Probably, they probably were. So. Okay, well, I think
that's it.
I think that's it. We got.
Per usual, we're going into long territory here.
But we're have a bonus ep for people who need
even more.
Need even more.
Yeah.
Which will drop. Have that be a Thursday ep with our boy Daniel Leary from MxPx Memes. We had a pretty good conversation. About memes, of course, his experience, his first album, MxPx album that he bought, and his some of his thoughts on Panic. And I think he also had trouble doing a top 3.
Yeah.
So
we asked him like multiple times. So what is your top?
Yeah,
3?
what is your top 3? And he couldn't get to it.
Understandable.
It's understandable because I experienced that live on this pod in the moment having a crisis. So, John, we're very readily approaching the end of the 10 albums. We have,
That's true.
Because this is the 7th.
Right.
Panic is the 7th. So the next one is Secret Weapon.
Mm-hmm.
And then Plans Within Plans, and then the newest record.
Yeah, we'll get into it.
We're going to get into that.
We'll get into other stuff beyond that.
Yes.
As we say every episode, rate and review us, subscribe, Apple Podcasts, iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, Spotify, YouTube, all the things.
All of it. I'm starting to upload some of the earlier eps to YouTube. The newer ones have been uploading automatically, so the format looks a little different. But if you prefer engaging on YouTube, hit us up there.
Yeah.
Hit us on the gram, Twitter.
How many places should you follow us on social? All of it.
All of it.
Nailed it.
Nailed it. That was super solid.
Thanks, man. Any closing thoughts?
I don't have any.
All right. Well then, on the next pod, we'll cover the boys of Magnified Plaid's secret weapon when it'll be time for a podcast at our house. And it wouldn't be the same without you. So join us, won't you?